Hi, this is Ralpha, Rosa from Eustache, and I'm an author. I live in North Carolina, and I'm the author of a series. I have book one, The Wonder of Sex, A Discoverative View, and book two, The Wonder of Sex, A Discoverative View, Sex and Society. The first thing I want to say is thank you for watching and attending my book event. The topic today is very interesting because I wanted to write about this and as a marvel and see what I discovered along the way. And I did discover some very interesting things. Everyone appreciates sex. It brings pleasure. That's so great, and people don't want to die before they have sex. It's something that brings pleasure, it brings joy to mankind, it bonds people. And so, with that, I set about to see and look at it as a marvel. And first of all, I discovered that it works in pairs design with function and pleasure. So you have the four systems that work together during sex. You have the nervous system, you have the cerebral system, the vascular system, and the reproductive system. And so all the while sex is happening, the vascular system is rushing blood to the sexual organs. The brain and the nervous system work together and transfer sensory messages to the body, back and forth, and to the body. And this is what brings the pleasure. And behind the scenes, the reproductive organs and the system are working. And this is where you have the blood in the organs, the receiving and the giving, and you have the seminal vesicles and the secretion membranes that work together, and the end result is an orgasm. So it works pretty marvelously. There's giving of pleasure that yields reproduction, and the end result is a child. And of course, couples can decide whether or not they will have children, and that is at their discretion. But all the while, the end result is bonding of two people in love. And so, since it bonds two people in love, it's very important that we take sex seriously as something that to be valued and treasured. So there are stages to sex, and why we talk about stages is because these days it's very common for people to engage in casual sex, but is that the healthy sex that really bonds a person as they should be bonded? We can definitely say no. But let me take a look at some excerpts in my book, and we can talk about the stages that lead to sex. So the first stage is attraction, and you have eye contact, you have the love, getting to know each other, and of course love will come afterwards. You have trust, then comes intimacy, then comes touch, and then the arousal, and then so forth, and then you come to sex. So these are the stages of how things work. Now, attraction is very selective. You are not attracted to just anyone. You're put in a room, if you're put in a room with 10 people, more than likely you'll be attracted to maybe one or two people, maybe five, and then the rest, you'll have no chemistry with them. So it's very selective, and it shows that there's nothing instinctive about the stages that lead us to sex. There's eye contact to affirm attraction and chemistry, getting to know each other, getting an understanding of the other person, finding out if you're interested, and then love. Now, these are the healthy stages to sex. So this is different than the casual sex, where sex has lost its intimacy. Also, these stages show that there is a design and a designer. People say that we are the product of evolution. However, evolution does not take credit for a design. It basically says that everything was an accident and everything happened by chance. But here, with reproduction and sex, we see that each species has their own sexual organs. Each species has their own mating. And so that shows that there was a design, there was a purpose. The purpose was reproduction. And here we have the whole earth that's populated with billions of people. And so we want to then understand then that sex has a designer, we have a designer, and there is a blueprint. So let me see if there's anything else. One important thing is that to note is that sex should be used with caution, because there are implications, and those implications, even though we want to say that we moved on to more modern times and what is immoral, there's no such thing. The case is that it's very opposite, because sex sets its own criteria, and regardless of whether anyone is sermoned or not, and that is no longer necessary. It's not necessary at all with sex, because the results are just there. And those implications are moral, they're emotional, and they're physical. And how does that come into play? Well, we see that when sex is abused through infidelity, then the result is moral, because you have the breakdown of a family. There are unwanted pregnancies. There is the physical aspect where you have STDs. And there's the emotional aspect where there's heartbreak. There's also being tied emotionally to a person where you're in the state of needing them, and they're the wrong person who's not there for you. So it's very important to be cautious. So this casual lifestyle of sex is not necessarily without consequence. So it's important to add value to your sex. And how you add value is those stages that I just discussed, where you're actually building upon something, getting to know a person, developing love, developing trust, and then going about the intimacy of sex. And there are institutions established for that. And one institution is marriage, where marriage grants the rights to exclusivity, and it's the height of commitment between a man and a woman. And so the exclusivity that it grants gives man and woman rights to each other. And so you stated before the world that you are wanting to be committed to another human being. And so this is healthy sex. And not only does marriage grant rights to two individuals, but it also grants rights to the children born within this union, because within marriage, children have the rights to their parents' time, full time. Whereas in a single parent family, the child may only have rights to one parent full time, or maybe is shared between two parents, or maybe only has one single parent and is not aware of their other biological parent. So marriage grants rights to children as well. So let me see. I talk about the mainstream culture of sex in my book because one thing that we're seeing is that there are influencers through media and maybe through television, Hollywood, where sex is fantasized, is given a fantasized image where there are no repercussions to the number of partners that you have. And people are just coaxed to jump in and lead that same lifestyle, but it's not without harm. In 2018 alone, the CDC reported that 1 in 5 people had an STD. And they said that this was on any given day. And so we want to be protected from things of this nature and add value through sex. And as I mentioned, one safe haven is marriage. Within marriage, you're free of the emotional, moral, and the physical implications of the criteria of sex. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so just to talk about sex and how it is something that's marvelous. Let's see if I find anything. Okay, this is marvelous. Sex serves a purpose within the reproduction of each species, and it refutes the theory of evolution of mammals over millions of years, since after mammals came into existence, the very next step of procreation and reproduction had to be sex within the reproductive organs. The whole process of bonding, pleasure, and climax to the release of sperm and the fertilization of the female egg is perfectly engineered and points to a blueprint. So where did this design originate? It points to a higher power and will. Therefore, sex brings great satisfaction of pleasure, and the pleasure and arousal that it brings about were intentional for reproduction and bonding, and with that, the world, with its billions of inhabitants, is populated. So sex points to a designer. It was perfectly engineered, and so we are the products of design. So it helps us see that if there's the design, there's a purpose with it, and we want to actually use it within reason of that purpose. And so we understand why there would be criteria attached to it. But it is wonderfully made, and we are wonderfully made in that aspect. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so here's another excerpt from my book, What Happens After Sex? There is an emotional string that is created between the two people. On the female side, emotional attachment is formed, and she becomes more in her feminine, and emotionally she develops a neediness, so to speak, for her partner. On the male side, he has an emotional home to come to bond romantically through sex, which is his female partner. The male and the female form an attachment through sex. So sex bonds people emotionally. So this is why a woman will feel needy, a little needy after sex. And for the male, he has that romantic attachment. This is where he displays his romance. And so there is like an emotional string, an emotional ribbon that ties the two together. And so it is important to be tied to the right person. And so you want to add value to your sex. And so this is something that's very important, because through healthy sex, with all the stages that were mentioned, this is how you can be bonded to the right person. And there are ways to go around casual sex and not have to be implicated in that. I talk about this in my book. Mainstream culture will have that people, or it's expected that people engage in casual sex. So a lot of people find that they're cornered and don't know how to work around this, because the expectation of the opposite sex would be that they have this casual sex in order to continue further with their dating. So I talk about this in my book, how to get around this. So I would encourage you to read it. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so I talked about the stages of sex. Sex and its stages. What drives the sex factor? There are stages that lead up to sex. These lead up to the male and the females coming together, and only these elements can prepare them for such an intimate and uninhibited sharing of themselves that sex requires. They are almost always necessary in healthy sex, so much so that these stages put to question does sex evolve. They point to other factors that make having sex something more complex than just performing the act, and it's more complex than just performing the act. So, which is more rewarding? Is it casual sex, or is it the intimate, healthy sex? So I talk about that in my book, and talk about the marvel of sex. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so this is another excerpt from my book. And we have free reign over our bodies, so we feel. But there are outside influences and influencers with their views on sex that tell us how to maneuver the matter. We're told how to view the opposite sex and sex itself by the media, by our friends at school, or as we mature, the persons we are dating and society. And somehow this is more powerful than our parents, or even more powerful than what we want. How does society shape our views on sex, and how do we work our way around this? This book will look at the wonder of sex, its complex design, sex in the framework of society, and the pleasure of sex. So I talk about this in my book, how to maneuver mainstream culture of sex, and just be more able to add value to your sex. And one thing I mentioned was the institution of marriage, but there is also more, and I look forward to speaking to you again, and hopefully you are tied to the right person emotionally, with a ribbon of love. Okay, thank you for listening.